There is a connection between the paranormal, UFOs, and the myths of ancient history. The clues are scattered across the landscape from a forbidden past, maybe even in your own backyard. There is a connection between the true nature of our reality, consciousness, and the unexplained. I'm Carl the Crusher. Let's explore the unknown. What's up, Crusher crew? This is Carl Crusher, and this is going to be a little bit of a different video. Usually I'm out exploring haunted locations, UFO hotspots, nodes on the ley line, places like Skinwalker Ranch or beyond, and even over to Hesteland, Norway, trying to track down the breadcrumb trails of the UFO crash recovery program and the psychic spy program of the United States government. Kind of where did they go, what were they doing, and why were they there? And along the way through this work, I've had a lot of strange experiences and things come up from my past and my childhood and encounters with interesting people in and out of the government from these different locations. And I was sitting here in my office this morning and I'm working on my book. I'm writing my life story from my childhood up, and the whole theme of the book is basically my first encounters of being abducted when I was a kid, and then other experiences of out-of-body travel, paranormal encounters, and different things like that. And as I was writing the book, I got into chapter 3, and this memory came flooding back to me that is super interesting, but also very vivid, and I remember it clearly. Now, I do not remember exactly how old I was, but I do know that it was after I had moved to this small town in Idaho, in Sugar City, Idaho. That's where I grew up and where I went to high school. And so I was at least in the second grade was when I moved out there. So it was either second grade through the fourth grade, so pretty young. But I also have memories of doing this a few times and having this happen. And what I'm talking about is when people from a certain organization showed up at the school, at the elementary school, and then there were certain kids that were like called off of a list and pulled out of class to go do specific tests. And this is something that I want to talk about because all of my involvement in going to UFO hotspots, paranormal locations, and places like Skinwalker Ranch, and I even just went over to Hesteland, Norway to track down all the connections between the psychic spy program and the UFO crash recovery programs and all of that. And when I go through these places, there's this common theme that ties into studying human consciousness, trying to look for people that are telepathic or clairvoyant, or that are capable of like channeling extraterrestrial communication, or are potentially able to do remote viewing. And if they could take these people, specifically little kids that are gifted in this way, to special locations, are they able to do remote viewing for psychic spy programs for the secret government? And so my memory that came up, I was writing my book this morning, I got into chapter 3, and this memory came flooding back to me, which was that I was sitting in class and somebody came to the door of the classroom and knocked on the door and then walked in and basically interrupted the lesson that the teacher had planned. And it's like, so in my memory, it's like the teacher wasn't aware that this was going to be going on. They had their lesson planned, and that was my impression anyways, in my memory. And then the way that it happened is they had like a brown clipboard with a metal spring clasp on the top with papers on it. And the person just read off like names of kids in the classroom, and my name was on that list. And so I got up and I was told to just leave my things in the classroom and follow this person. So we went and lined up at the door and we walked down the hallway. And I remember that we followed him like into the gymnasium where we would normally play basketball and stuff. And we went in there, and just off to the side of the gymnasium, there was like attached offices, and just down the hall, there was other rooms and lounges and things like that in the school building. And I don't quite remember the layout, but I remember going into a room and there was like nurses in there. And at first it was like a whole physical test. And they pulled out this whole like clipboard thing. And I can't quite remember the order, which happened first. But what it had to do with at first was vaccinations. It had to do with making sure that my vaccines were up to date, making sure that I had all my shots and all of my injections. And then they said they were going to do like a hearing test, a physical examination, and then they were going to test my vision and my memory, and like it was a gifted and talented test or something. That's the way it was presented to me. They were going to see if I was some kind of a special kid and if I had some kind of special gifts or talents. And also they wanted to see if I had scoliosis and other things. So on the surface, it was like just a medical physical and getting updated with my vaccinations. And then there was going to be some kind of like a quiz. But that's not what really happened. So at least from my memories and the way that it all just came back to me. And the whole reason I'm making this video is, as I'm telling this, I want to know, growing up, especially if you were going to school, grade school in the 1980s or up through the 90s, if you had similar experiences. So basically there's these nurses, like women dressed in white, and there's doctors in white doctors coats and lab coats and things in there, and people walking around with clipboards and files and stuff. And in the room, it was like a classroom or some kind of an extra schoolroom building that was by the gymnasium. And they had tables that were set up, and on the tables was like these partitions or these dividers. And there was these like brown boxes that looked like briefcases. This is all in my memory. I'm not sure how accurate this is. They looked like tan colored briefcases or suitcases that were like, had metal clasps, and they were latched on the front, like they were closed. And then people were going around, these workers, and they were like popping them open. And inside it was like, there was a whole tape recorder set, like a tape player, cassette player, and then like a pair of headphones. And in my memory, the headphones were either also like tan color, like military brown, or tan color, like khaki, or they were like a green, like an army green color, like headphones that you would put on over the ear. And so first, before we did that, it was like there was like this physical exam. I remember going over and I took my shirt off, and they had me bend over and touch my toes to see how far I could bend over. And then they checked my spine. They said it was to check for scoliosis. They were going through like this file and medical records. I know they looked in my ears, and it was just like a regular physical exam at first, kind of behind like a curtain. And there was other kids in the room. There was other kids from the school in the room. And then after kind of that basic stuff, I went over and they assigned me I put my shirt back on. They told me where to go sit. And then there was the cassette player in front of me with the headset on. And I remember it was like gifted and talented, but somehow I remember, and might be like an overlay from my memories, but I remember it saying gifted and talented, like GAT was part of the word like gate or gateway. And this might be overlaid because of the Monroe Institute and the gateway process that the CIA uses, but we're going to get into all of that because I wonder if this is part of what was going on back in that generation and what was maybe happening. But I put the headset on, the headphones on, and they told me to start playing the tape. Somebody came over and hit play on the tape recorder. And then I remember there was like a tone, and then there was the sound of ocean. It was like ocean waves, like rushing, like in and out. And so immediately I remembered this old record player or cassette tape that my mom had at our house, and she had been given it by somebody at work. And it was like a meditation cassette that had ocean waves, and then you would meditate and visualize like you're going down an elevator from level 10 down to 1. And as you go from level 10 down to 1, you relax all of the individual parts of your body and all your muscles, like in your legs, your feet, your back, and your head, neck, and arms, all that. And it's like a relaxation cassette tape to go to sleep. So when I heard the ocean waves with the headset on, I immediately thought, oh, this is like the elevator meditation that my mom's had me do before. And so it felt familiar. And in my mind, I thought, I'm going to do really good at this. I'm going to pass this hearing test really well because I already know what this is. And that's where it's funny, is because they told me it was a hearing test, but then it was like a meditation cassette tape. And it wasn't like I remember any kind of a hearing test that had to do with being able to hear stuff like an actual hearing doctor. It was actually a meditation. It was like a guided meditation thing. And I remember the ocean waves sound, and I remember the sound of a man's voice talking and narrating. And I do remember a sound in the right ear and being like, I had to take notes on this piece of paper, like check a box. Did I hear the sound in my right ear or my left ear? And I do remember having a piece of paper and a pencil and answering questions as I went through the quiz. And then at some point, while I have the headphones on, my memory gets very blurry. Like, I don't know if I fell asleep. I don't know if I was hypnotized. I don't know if my memory is just foggy because it's just like a boring hearing test, and so I forgot. But right at this point where I'm like going into the ocean waves and I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to do really good at this test, there's this tone in one ear, there's a tone in the other, there's a guy narrating, and then he's describing different types of noise. And I remember him saying this is like a pink noise and describing a sound as a color. I really vividly have that memory, like this is a pink sound or pink noise. And then it was like this sound. And then after that, I legit do not remember like if I fell asleep with the headphones on or what was going on. But all of a sudden, I have this memory, if you move forward a little bit, like I have this memory where all of a sudden I'm in another room with a nurse. There's a lady there, and she has the clipboard with like a manila folder thing on it, and it has like my file. It even has the quiz that I just took from the hearing station in the other room. And I'm standing in there, and she says to me, oh, you have O negative blood. She tells me I have type O negative blood type. And I don't know what that means, if that means anything particular about my O negative blood type. I've heard that's like a universal blood donor type or whatever. But then she shows me this sheet of the required some vaccinations. It's just like a whole list of medical terms, vaccinations that you're supposed to have or whatever. And then at the bottom of the sheet, I see what looks like my mom's signature. Like somehow at some point they got my mom to sign off like, yeah, go ahead. If he needs updated vaccines, go ahead and give them to him. And so she had already signed off. I remember seeing my mom's name sign at the bottom because I felt all of a sudden this dread, like, oh, I'm going to have to get shots. And then I did. I remember going to this next curtain, and there's a lady there, and they handed her the files. And then it was like shot after shot. I remember getting like 3 injections. It's like I got 2 in this arm and 1 in the other. I remember getting at least 3 shots and being like, ugh, and just feeling like I was absolutely sick. And after they gave me the shots, I remember like trying to hold a pen because they wanted me to sign on the same piece of paper that my mom had signed. And I remember feeling like my shoulder was like so sore, like I couldn't even like hardly sign my name. My hand was like shaking. I was feeling like at this point definitely traumatized by this whole battery of tests. And then it's like after that, after I get the injections, it's like I remember being brought into this other room, and there's 2 people in there. One of them looks like a doctor dressed in a white lab coat, and I remember him having glasses on, And in the other one, I, in this strange memory, feel like he was dressed in some kind of military clothes. Not like camouflage, but just like khakis, like brown, tan colored khaki military, like nicely dressed. And they were both sitting on the other side of this table, and I was in this room by myself. And after that, I have no memory. I have no idea what happened. I just know being like back in class and like life was going on. But here's the thing, like, as my life has gone on, I have had more strange encounters. I had other different tests like that as I grew up. When I got into junior high, I definitely was pulled out of school by different groups from the military and given different tests, aptitude tests, and more hearing tests and different things to see if I was gifted and talented. And then even in high school, I had a really strange encounter that I'm just getting ready to get to this part and write about in my book, where I had a guy come to our class, to our history class, and tell this whole experience about a nuclear submarine that sank out in the ocean that was this Russian submarine, and how Howard Hughes had to build this ship to go try and recover it, and how it was this whole secret program to try and recover nuclear submarines. And then after that guy came and told the story and how the movie Hunt for Red October was real. There's been so many strange events where that guy in high school, even in the hallway, after he did his presentation, he grabbed me in the hallway. He said he knew who my dad was and that he knew my family. And that never made sense to me, but my dad always liked watching the movie The Hunt for Red October. And then now, as an adult, as I've gotten interested in looking into these places where the UFO crash recovery program has been, the government's psychic spy program, and you realize that on one hand, you've got this story of heroes that are going along that are trying to solve this problem of extraterrestrial life and UFOs, and is there life out there? But on the other hand, there was these programs, like you had MK Ultra, you had Project Mockingbird, you had the whole psychic spy program, you had the Montauk Project and the Philadelphia experiment. You had this whole technological underlying experimentation that was going on during this entire era, where there was scientists like Andrei Puharich, Itzhak Bentov. There was all these researchers and scientists that were fundamentally intrigued and interested in human consciousness, and they were doing a lot of experiments on kids. And like MK Ultra and some of the people involved in that, like Michael Aquino, he was heavily tied into the non-lethal weapons development programs that were all part of the Pentagon and the CIA, and these secret programs that were involved in trying to master mind control. This idea of, can we remote control human beings? Can we use frequencies and radar and technology to basically send a frequency or light patterns or whatever into someone's subconscious, and then give them visions or make them hear voices, or even pilot them and remote control them like a drone or like an RC car. And some of these programs were real, and they were experimenting to see, like, if we took I know that there was an experiment that, like, Arthur Young, the inventor of the Bell helicopter, one of the things that he talks about is how the Russians took a rabbit and they took the baby rabbit away from the mother, and they put the baby rabbit down on a submarine and kept the mother in observation back on the lab. And as they did things to the baby on the submarine, they could measure the physiological effects and in the brain waves of the mother rabbit back in the laboratory, proving that there was a non-local connection or some kind of a quantum psychic tethering that would occur between the mother and the baby. And this sort of revelation spurred off this entire psychic spy program, where in the Montauk Project, you can hear about people like scientist and researcher Dan Winter. They talk about how people like Andrei Puharich came out of the Montauk Project, and they were experimenting with certain geometric radar arrays that they could point radio frequencies and different lasers and sound waves at people's brains, specifically children, to try and affect them, to give them clairvoyance or clairaudience, to where they could see into alternate dimensions or communicate with aliens or even spy on the Russians as part of the Cold War. And so as part of that, this whole idea of a recruitment program, this conspiracy that there may have been an effort in the public school systems to try and isolate gifted and talented gateway kids that were primed or possible clairvoyant or telepathic children, was a whole thing. And it makes you wonder, was it tied in to this whole Indian adoption program and on the amount of missing women and children off of Native American reservation lands, and the adoption programs that were going on at that time, where literally people were just being kidnapped and human trafficked and placed into other homes, and a lot of them just went missing. A lot of them went into orphanages and boarding houses and then disappeared. And so to wonder where they did these testing and these experiments, and if they truly found special gifted and talented kids, were those kids arranged to be taken to be utilized in any of these programs, is really fascinating. But I just had that memory come flooding back to me, and I wanted to reach out, put that story out there. Do you have a memory when you were growing up where you were pulled out of class and told to put on headphones and do some kind of a strange hearing test or visual test that turned out to be more like a gateway process or protocol meditation that could have been part of an MK Ultra screening thing that was going on during that generation? So let me know down in the comments below. I'm going to continue to write my book and see what else comes out from all of this. And also we're going to continue to explore all of these topics in my video series when we go to real locations and real places, and we see if truly being gifted and talented in this way, if you can achieve coherence between human brain waves and the electromagnetic field of the ley lines of ancient sacred places. That's what I think these scientists were actually doing and what they were searching for and what they discovered. And so the question is now, independently, without the influence of all these conspiracies and government infiltration and screenings and weird stuff, can we go out now into these places and test to see what's true and what's real underneath all of that strange darkness that was going on during the Cold War? So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Were you part of a strange hearing and testing and physical experiment thing where you were also lined up and taken into other rooms as part of a strange program that didn't make sense as a child? Let me know down in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next one.